In today's installment of our series on understanding rhythm, I'd like to discuss the swing rhythm. It's one of my favorites. Here's how it sounds. So you can hear this, there's this bouncy feeling underneath the music. And swing feels different depending on what tempo you're playing at, depending on what style of music. But what's always true about a swing rhythm is that we have an alternating long and short eighth note. If we compare the way I'm playing this to how I've played this same piece of music with a straight eighth note, the pulse is actually in the same place, right? The quarter note is here. Bum, 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 bum. The difference is how we're dividing the beat. So if I divide it into even eighth notes, straight eighth notes like we get in classical music, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, that sounds quite different than swung eighth notes, where the and is a little bit late. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. The magic of this rhythm is that it isn't always the same. There are different ways of playing swing, right? You can play around with how heavy the swing subdivision is. You can play a really, really heavy swing. That means that shorter second eighth note comes really late. Or you can play a straighter swing, one that's just a little bit uneven. And what you choose to do will just depend on what exact style and tempo you're playing, and also kind of your personal expression. If you're new to this feeling in rhythm, the best thing to do is listen to styles of music that use swing. So, jazz, especially more traditional jazz, almost always is using a swing subdivision. It comes up a lot in musical theater music, also lots of soul and R&B, blues music, gospel music. So start by listening to those styles of music and trying to identify this subdivision of the beat. And you can just count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And with enough exposure to that, you'll be able to just play swung eighth notes intuitively on your own. If you are new to it and you're having trouble finding that swing feeling, it can help a little bit to relate it to a triplet. There is some rough relationship to what happens when we divide a beat into 3 parts, into triplets. It's a little bit like what we saw with compound meter, where instead of dividing the beat into everything being perfectly divided into multiples of 2, in this case, there's something of a feeling of dividing things into 3. Even if you're still playing things as eighth notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and there's kind of a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a feeling underneath that. And the translation there is that we have a triplet where the first 2 eighth notes in the triplet are tied together. I can demonstrate on these 3 notes. So if I play triplets like this, 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and then I just don't play the D, 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and that gets me pretty close to a swung eighth note. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So thinking of the triplet and then tying the first 2 triplet notes together can be a helpful way to find the swing subdivision. And it can be tricky to read music that has a swing feel, because often we just write that as if it's straight eighth notes. We don't do anything special other than saying at the top of the page that this has a swing subdivision. So that means you're reading something like what we're showing on screen, where it just looks like normal straight eighth sheet music, and you have to know how to find that, that late eighth note there on the 3rd beat. So I will still sometimes think of that triplet subdivision when I'm sight reading music that has a swing subdivision, just because it helps me place things against the beat and be a little more accurate with it. But you don't want to be too closely tied to that idea of the triplet subdivision, because like I say, swing can mean all sorts of different things. it typically straightens out as music gets faster. So if you're playing like fast jazz, like a bebop tune, it's often almost straight eighth notes. There's just a certain lilt to it, and there's a way that we emphasize the articulation and accents in that style of music that is quite different from how you would play it if it were straight eighth notes written out in a different style. Anywhere that the swing subdivision comes up, it's really coming out of an aural tradition. So more than anything, you always want to use your ears so that you can sound like you belong in the style when you're playing music that has a swing subdivision. That concludes our series on understanding rhythm. At least for now, there are lots of concepts related to rhythm that I left out of the series or covered pretty briefly. So if there's something in particular that you want to learn more about, you want me to discuss it on this channel, put it in the comments and I may revisit some of these rhythm concepts again in the future. In the meantime, you can head to pianofluency.com if you want to learn more from me on how to play the piano and move beyond just understanding these concepts. My name is Ted with Piano Fluency. Thanks for joining me.